Should there be a dress code for voters when they head to the polls?
It's a question currently in front of the U.S. Supreme Court right now, stemming from a lawsuit out of Minnesota.
Team 12's Charlie Etzedy is taking a look at the case that's already raising a lot of First Amendment questions.
Well, the issue here is whether or not articles of clothing like T-shirts and hats and even buttons with political slogans have a place inside polling locations across the country.
It's a classic balancing test. You're trying to balance having a place where you can vote free of intimidation.
But does political gear constitute intimidation? A case out of Minnesota is now before the Supreme Court and questions whether a law in that state outlawing political clothing at polls is constitutional.
This is a classic case for the Supreme Court. They're having to, draw a line. And the question is, where do you draw that line?
One of the major issues at hand is the First Amendment and free speech. Should those rights stop when you enter into a polling location?
So that's the argument. It's like, this is my free speech right. I'm exercising my free speech right under the First Amendment, and it's peaceful.
The voter out of Minnesota was wearing a Please ID Me button and a Tea Party shirt at his polling place, and workers initially stopped him from casting a ballot. And another looming question, what happens if one does wear a prohibited item and is not allowed to vote? Could that be voter suppression? A 2012 state law allows Arizona voters to sport political gear at the polls, and it remains to be seen what the Supreme Court will ultimately say is constitutional.
And I think even as interesting as where you draw the line, how do you enforce whatever rule you put in place? Who's going to enforce that rule? And are you going to be swayed in enforcing that rule by your own political affiliations?
And the Supreme Court is expected to announce a ruling in this case by June. We're in Phoenix. Charlie Etzedy, 12 News.